Imagine being part of a criminal underworld so out of control. Even the mafia needed to hit reset. Bosses were getting shot in the street. Gunmen were hiding in coal cellars and restaurants. And the two most powerful dons in New York, they were at war with the future of organized crime on the line. This wasn't a movie, it was real. And it ended with one of them in a pool of blood, and the other stabbed in the chest after winning. This is the story of the Castellammarese War, the mafia civil war that tore New York apart and gave birth to the 5 families and the commission. And it changed everything. Smash that like button if you love mafia history, and let me know in the comments. Would you have sided with Joe the Boss or Salvatore Maranzano? Because both men were ruthless, but only one walked away temporarily. Let's get into it. The 1920s were the Wild West of the American Mafia. There was no commission, no 5 families, no rules, just chaos. Sicilian mob bosses carving out territory in cities filled with bootleggers, gamblers, killers, and anyone looking to make a fast dollar during Prohibition. And sitting at the top of this mess, Joe Masseria. People called him Joe the Boss. He ran much of the Italian underworld in New York. And how'd he get there? Simple. He bullied his way to the top. If you were a smaller crew, you either kicked up to him, or you got whacked. His guys were loud, greedy, and reckless. Think muscle over brains. Masseria had money, soldiers, and power, but what he didn't have, respect, because a storm was brewing, and it was coming from Sicily. A rival group, mostly immigrants from a small town in Sicily, called Castellammarese del Golfo, was rising fast. These guys were old school, they played the long game, and their leader, Salvatore Maranzano. He was smart, educated, cold, and unlike Masseria, Maranzano believed the mafia needed structure like ancient Rome. He saw himself as a Caesar in waiting, and just like that, lines were drawn. Masseria's crew versus Maranzano's Castellammarese faction. A full-blown mafia civil war in the streets of New York. So now we've got 2 bosses, 2 visions, and way too many guns. From 1929 to 1931, the streets of New York ran hot. Soldiers were disappearing, cars were getting torched, restaurants were turned into war zones. This wasn't a turf squabble, it was a full-on underworld war, with both sides stacking bodies like poker chips. Masseria's guys were mostly Neapolitan, Brooklyn-based, loud, fast-tempered. Guys like Ciro Terranova and Vito Genovese were in his corner. Maranzano, he had the Sicilian loyalty, cooler heads, deeper connections. One of his rising stars, Joseph Bono. Yeah, that Bonanno. But the wild card in all of this, Charles Lucky Luciano. Luciano had started under Masseria. He was a smart earner, a survivor, and one of the few young guys who saw that this whole system, this Sicilian blood feud nonsense, was outdated. He didn't care about being a man of honor. He cared about money, about building something bigger, a real business, not a pride war between 2 old bosses who refused to adapt. Luciano was also friends with guys outside the Italian world. That mattered. He had Jewish partners like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, and Irish allies in the bootlegging trade. That was unheard of back then. Masseria didn't like it. Maranzano tolerated it, barely. But Luciano, he saw it as the future. So what does he do? He makes a move that would go down as one of the boldest betrayals in mafia history. He flips, quietly. He starts talking to Maranzano behind Masseria's back. And then in 1931, the plan goes into motion. It's a sunny day in Coney Island. Luciano is having lunch with Masseria at a small Italian restaurant. They're playing cards, eating pasta, nothing unusual, until Luciano excuses himself to use the bathroom. Seconds later, 3 gunmen storm in and empty their clips into Joe Masseria. Boom. The self-declared boss of bosses, dead shot in the head, cards still in his hand, blood splattered across the table. The hit team allegedly included Bugsy Siegel, Albert Anastasia, and Joe Adonis, all future names in mafia infamy. Masseria was gone, but the war, not over. So now it's 1931. Joe Masseria is dead, and Salvatore Maranzano, he's riding high. He declares himself capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses, the Roman emperor role he always wanted, and he thinks Luciano's betrayal sealed their alliance. He thinks wrong, because Luciano didn't kill Masseria just to swap one old-school dictator for another. He wanted change, and Maranzano, he wanted more control, more titles, more tradition. Luciano realized Maranzano was just a different flavor of the same problem, and it gets worse. Maranzano starts plotting Luciano's murder. He tells his guys, this young punk is too ambitious, too Americanized. He's dangerous, but Luciano hears about it, and instead of waiting for the knife in his back, he moves first. A few months after Masseria's death, Luciano sends 4 hitmen to Maranzano's office. They're disguised as IRS agents, clean suits, fake badges. They walk into the building, flash their credentials, and within minutes, Maranzano is dead, stabbed, strangled, shot, in his own office, on the 9th floor of the Helmsley building. That's it. 2 bosses, 2 bloody hits, 1 survivor, Lucky Luciano. What Luciano did next changed the American Mafia forever. He abolished the boss of bosses title, said it created too much ego, too much bloodshed. Instead, he established the Commission, a governing board made up of the top bosses in the country, the 5 families in New York, plus key players from Chicago and other cities. Every boss had a seat. Every major beef had to be voted on. You didn't get to just whack someone because you felt like it anymore. It was like the Mafia's Supreme Court, Board of Directors and UN all rolled into one. Luciano also reorganized the families. He helped set the rules that would guide the mob for the next 50 years. No killing a maid guy without permission. No selling drugs. No sleeping with another maid guy's wife. And above all, no more unnecessary wars. The 5 families you hear about today, they were born out of this war. The Gambino, Genovese, Lucchese, Colombo, and Bonanno families, structured, connected, and placed under the Commission's watch. And the crazy part, it worked. For decades, the Mafia became more profitable, more organized, and more powerful than ever before. Luciano turned a loose, blood-soaked mess into a criminal enterprise so structured, it made millions before breakfast. And the price? 2 dead bosses, dozens of dead soldiers, 1 civil war, thousands of years in prison, and a system that still echoes today. Now let me ask you this. If you were Luciano, and you had the chance to take out both bosses to build something bigger, would you do it? Comment below. I want to hear your take on this move. Smash that like button if you learned something new about Mafia history, and don't forget to subscribe, because next episode, we're going deep into the rise of Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the underworld. No gun in his hand, just money, judges, and total control. Until then, stay smart, stay sharp, and never sit with your back to the door.